thinking what we need, Mike, actually, is a jingle, isn't it? That's what we haven't got.
Okay, we'll work on that. We'll speak to the music department and see where we can get jingle.
Ben, wasn't it? Ben's on that, but anyway.
Oh, Ben, yeah, actually, Mr. Davis, absolutely.
All right, well, welcome everyone to a trip down Goddington Lane, which is a new podcast from the St Olave's P department. Really, it's a chance to catch up with older Lavians and discuss their sporting journey and how it's impacted on their lives. This episode is going to be hosted by me, Andy Kenward, alongside Mike Perks, and in the background, doing all the clever IT stuff, is sixth former James Double. So, gentlemen, thank you. But most importantly, we are also delighted to welcome our first guest, who is older Lavian James Goodman, who is from the school from 2002 through to 2008. I think those dates are right, aren't they, Goodsy?
Might be 2009, I think, unless.
Okay, fair enough. All right, 2009. There we go. Start with a mistake. James works in financial management, and in his own words, he basically looks after rich people's money. But at school, and this is why we really want him on for his sport, but he was an outstanding sportsman in a number of different sports, rugby, Eton Fives, but it was in cricket that he truly excelled. Whilst at St Olave's, he captained the England under-16 cricket team to a series victory against Australia, which certainly I rank as his best ever achievement. Likes of current superstars such as Joe Root, Joss Butler and Ben Stokes were all in the team. And he was then part of the England under-19 World Cup team in 2008. Then went on to become a member of the professional squad at Kent between 2009 and 2011, making his first class debut against the Pakistan touring team, where James scored 59. And he also captained the Kent second 11 in 2010-11, but did concede that he bagged a pair at Lord's in his last game in 2011. James, a very warm welcome to you to a trip down Goddington Lane. It's lovely to have you here. Thank you for giving up your time this evening to be with us.
That's great to be here. Thank you very much for the very kind introduction.
Well, you've provided it, so. But I do. Fortunately, I was at school at the same time that you were, which was something I was certainly very, very pleased about. So I know all those things are true as well. Even if I forget the dates that you're actually there, I think the highlights of some of those achievements sort of blew me away a little bit. Okay, I want to get straight into it, James, if I can, and sort of ask you a few questions. How did you get into sport? What are your earliest sporting memories? Can you remember anything?
My father was a huge influence on me in terms of starting sport. So from a very young child, I now have a daughter who's nearly 2, and I'm already starting to throw and kick balls around with her. But from that kind of age, I was kicking balls, throwing balls, catching balls with my dad in the back garden. We'd go to the park around the corner all the time. My mum's dad was also very keen on sport. Football and cricket were his passions. So really it was nurtured from that kind of young age, just always being having a ball at my feet or throwing a ball against the wall and catching it and annoying my mum, my sister and other people in the house.
Lots of broken things in the house.
Well, yeah, no, I one when I was about 11, just before I joined St Olave's, actually, I broke the porch window in our house, and I tried to explain it that we'd been burgled. We went to cricket practice one evening. There was a whole. I'd done it before we went to cricket practice, and we came back, and I tried to convince my mum that we'd been burgled, when actually it was me bowling a cricket ball at the wall.
Do you think you'd have found your way into sport anyway? I know you're saying you've got a strong sort of influence there from various family members. Do you think it would have happened anyway, or do you think it was literally that sort of situation you were in brought out in you?
I think it kind of accelerated and strengthened my kind of passion for sport of all kind, because by the time I ended up going to junior school or even nursery, I found that I could already do quite a lot that other children couldn't. and there's nothing like being good at something and seeing that feedback from, being able to score the goals, being able to catch the ball, things like that. So I think it definitely accelerated my kind of passion. But I think looking back, the great thing was that it wasn't at that age, it wasn't one sport at all that was the focus. We played all different kinds of games. It wasn't even, necessarily football or cricket. It could be a bit of rugby, tennis. Just keeping it very broad early on, I think, was the key.
And actually, that was something I was going to touch on as well, because I remember very vividly speaking to Paul Farbrace, who was went on to great things in cricket managing. Was it Sri Lanka he managed in the end?
He was coach of Sri Lanka, full time, having been assistant coach with Trevor Bayliss. So they had a very good partnership. And then he moved to be England assistant coach after he'd been Sri Lanka coach with Trevor Bayliss, and they did very well. Obviously,
I remember when. Sorry, apologies, go on.
Culminating in them, they won the Ashes together, and they also, unfortunately, Farbrace had just left England to be director of cricket at Warwickshire, but he was very instrumental in the team that won the World Cup back in 2019. He went on to really, really big things in international cricket.
Well, I remember him coming into St Olave's to meet with me to talk about you and to talk about your development and your involvement in sport. And I found it very refreshing that his view was that you should just get involved in every sport, because we had that direct conversation. This was all the time about Kent contracts and all that sort of thing. And obviously they had a great interest in you. And I remember thinking, this is going to be awkward, because we're going to want to say as a school, we want you playing lots of sports. And he's going to come in and say, no, we must protect him. But that wasn't his approach at all. Looking back on it, are you sort of pleased that he took that approach, or would you rather he said, no, you must just focus on cricket?
No, absolutely. I think it contributed quite a lot to how far I ended up going in cricket, that I wasn't burnt out from a young age, that I was able to, play Eton Fives with Howard and school friends, and, have another distraction and another sport to focus on, continue to play rugby for as long as I did. That was always the bit of the dilemma, because in rugby, I always felt like I could get injured, and how much I wanted the trade-off between missing out on cricket and playing rugby. But more generally, when I think at the ages of 14, 15, 16, I was definitely playing all kinds of different sport. Although cricket was the one that I was kind of excelling at most, it wasn't stopping me, as you say, playing for other sports. And you just get a very good sense of different teams, different environments. Although I was excelling at cricket, a lot of the time I was in teams that were actually struggling when we were playing for Kent. We had strong opposition in Surrey and local counties like that. So to then come back and play, Eton Fives, where we were really fantastic and we could, dominate some of the other schools, was a real kind of lift and pick up, so that you always go into the next sporting fixture, whatever it was, in kind of a positive mindset. And then just the camaraderie, to feel like you're really part of the school as well, to not be, the cricket guy that was not going to be part of the rugby team or going on the Eton Fives trips and things like that. That was important to me.
Well, every year group seems to be very tight, doesn't it? But I certainly remember, lots of I'd say students, sort of your friends and so on, who you played with, and you were, I'm sure by your own admission, would appreciate you were part of a really strong sporting year group. There's some other tremendous players in there, not just at cricket, but in rugby and all sorts of different sports as well. Have you got any sort of sporting memories from different teams you played in at OLAV, so you could that you're allowed to share with us?
Yeah, well, looking back in a way, I kind of. I was thinking about this morning before our chat. I kind of wish I was a bit more relaxed and didn't take myself so seriously, particularly around cricket. Looking back and think, getting angry with people for misfielding and, focusing on all the tactics and getting the field positions right, rather than, actually enjoying the game and letting people kind of get on and do their things. In terms of, my memories, our sevens rugby team was a real standout. I think we won a year 9 sevens competition at the school when we had people like Dulwich College there. I think Whitgift might have been there as well. And that was a real sense of a team that had been together for 3 years or so. And I always think that in going into year 7, it's really difficult at the start to kind of gel a rugby team with lots of people that haven't played rugby before. And we really, in my year group, went on that process of not having a great deal of success in year 7. By year 8, it's gradually sort of coming together. You're learning more about the game, gelling more with your teammates. And by year 9, we'd found a real camaraderie, which culminated in that Sevens tournament win. That was a real highlight. And I think the rugby success is a nice success because it really is spread out across a team. In a cricket match or even in a fives match, as a smaller team, in a cricket match, obviously an individual can make such a big difference to the end result. Whereas in rugby, I always felt you were only as strong as kind of your weakest player on the day, and so that real sense of togetherness was a real highlight, having come from some lower times in the earlier years.
So that journey must have been really sort of good for you as a player as well, to have that experience at school, but also obviously then you're taking that into the county environment and so on. How different was the county environment to a school environment?
It was quite different in the sense that it took me a little bit of time to get over the fact that I was actually there. So I didn't get into the Kent age group team until I was 13. And without trying to be arrogant, I think I was good enough since I was sort of 10 or 11. At the time, I think living in Bromley and sort of the west side of Kent was a big disadvantage, because a lot of the cricket coaches from Kent were down in Canterbury and down on the east coast of Kent. And so once I actually got into the setup, I felt quite comfortable. It's just, I think people are slightly more focused. There's no time to kind of to waste. There's not so much focus on the technical skills, I think, because the kind of groundwork has been done before you get into the county squad. It's much more around how you're going to be effective when you're playing the game. So it's honing those kind of tactical and strategic skills as much as it is, working on kind of foundational technique. And then it is competitive as well, which is something I really enjoyed at that kind of age group. I mean, another name that is now doing really well, Sam Billings. I was sort of in the team with him at under 13, and he was just always been super competitive. And I think I saw people really thrive in that environment, and then some people were actually shocked by it because they'd always been used to kind of being the best at school, and you go into a kind of an environment where the competition is that much fiercer. So I think it's just a slightly different focus, to answer the question, on tactics and being effective in a game situation, combined with that competitiveness that kind of drives on the environment and drives on the team.
Did you have one that you preferred over the other? I mean, did you in some ways either prefer the competitive higher level of county cricket and area cricket, or did you actually prefer, the pressure's off a little bit coming back and playing school cricket? Even though I was your coach and we played some good cricket. You were in a really strong team for cricket at school. But nonetheless, I imagine the pressure was off in some ways. Or did you feel more pressure because you were obviously the star player?
It's funny you say that. I felt more pressure. I remember I think we played Skinners on the home ground at St Ives on the bottom field, and I batted for about 6 or 7 overs. I got 10 runs. I scratched around and I got caught playing a horrible shot at mid-off or something like that. And I remember people had come out of lessons in the afternoon because I was going to be batting, and looking around, and I went on to play in some bigger stadiums with obviously more people watching, but never felt that kind of peer pressure of expectation and weight. So in many ways I did feel more pressure at school level, again because I wanted to prove that I was kind of worthy of all the fuss that people were making, but then also because I wanted to do well for the school at the same time. And just the kind of the mindset was slightly different in county cricket. The standard, yes, is slightly better, and so you're getting, as a batsman, say, fewer loose balls, and so you're in that mindset of maybe being a bit more conservative. Whereas in school cricket, the dilemma was always, well, really probably want to try and rein myself in a bit and not make a silly mistake because I might get a bad ball next over which I can put away, and it's that kind of balancing act of getting the attitude right.
Would you say you were a driven character in terms of training and playing and thinking about the game constantly. Would that describe you, or is that not how you felt?
Yeah, increasingly so during my time at the school. So Paul Farbrace was instrumental in me getting onto the academy. I think that was at 15, and my kind of seriousness about the game increased dramatically with getting onto the academy, because we were training all through the winter. I was travelling down to Canterbury a Tuesday and a Thursday evening, and again on a Sunday, which was quite a big commitment at the time. And my mum was driving me down in the evenings after work. So yeah, I think it did take on another level of seriousness, and that impacted then thinking about things like nutrition. Although I never really got on board with nutrition. If anybody remembers me in the canteen, I was always a sausage, a piece of toast, and a chocolate donut or something like that. I hope they still have those. But then maybe more on the fitness side of things, doing some more specific fitness work. So yeah, it did increase.
Goodsy, if I might jump in at this point, what moment did you think, yeah, I'm actually going to really invest in the cricket idea? Was it a moment? Was it always a passion from a young age? I'm just curious to know kind of what moment you kind of thought, yeah, I'm actually going to give this a real crack.
Yeah, it's a good question. In my mind, I never wanted to. This is going to sound like a very cliche sports kind of answer. I didn't want to look too far ahead. Although I was seeing people that I'd played with progress that maybe were a couple of years older. Think about something like Alex Blake, who went to Hayes School, who then progressed into the professional squad at Kent. I kind of didn't want to look too far ahead, because I knew how much kind of luck, right space, right time was there. So it wasn't until I got into the second team in the summer after my GCSEs, I played a couple of games where I remember playing against James Kirtley at Sussex, who had been in the England team maybe 18 months before, and batting against him. And yeah, I didn't dismantle him, but he also didn't get me out. And the feeling of confidence you get from playing against somebody like that, and just the more steps I took, the more experience I got, I found that actually the better the standard, the better I played. Which was kind of, it did give me confidence in that respect. So by the time I was in that GCSE summer year, having done the GCSEs, I thought it was a possibility. But then, as I'm sure the students today who are in kind of a similar position, you have to weigh up, what's the right route in terms of university, committing full time to a sport that is uncertain. And so I wasn't, cricket's the only thing I'm ever going to do. Even when I was in the professional squad, I kind of had a backup plan as well.
And just in terms of managing, obviously you referenced the travelling commitments, the training commitments, and that was Kent, but also with school. How did you find the challenge of balancing both that academic workload, because you went on to do fantastically well in terms of your studies as well as the sporting side of things? Would you say that level of competition or that kind of discipline was a transferable skill across into both the academic side of life as well as the sporting side?
I think definitely, yeah. See, I worry a little bit now for young people that are put under so much pressure about exams that they're not able to go and do, they don't have to be big commitments to a professional team or anything like that, but enjoy playing sport, team sport, mixing with friends outside of schoolwork. Because for me, it was they complemented each other. I remember, as Andy said at the beginning, I went to Sri Lanka and Malaysia in my year 12, when I was in year 12, sort of January, February time. And actually having some books there from school during that 6-week trip and able to take my mind off cricket by, going down. I remember sitting in the canteen in the hotel and just skimming through my history books and having a distraction really helped me kind of keep a balance in both parts of my life. And so I think, yeah, if I could give a young person advice on, yes, exams are important, but I found that I did well in my studies and in my exams because I had this other opportunity to release energy, another part of my life that I could really enjoy and look forward to. And having that space helped both aspects.
Awesome.
Back at school, James, have you got any memories you can share with us now? Has enough time passed that you could share perhaps I don't know if you have any stories from either you and your mates of stuff you got up to that you could maybe tell us, or if there was a teacher who you want to talk about. I don't know, get something off your chest, or I know you went on cricket tours and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Is there anything, any memories come back to mind there?
Yeah. Paul Holland's cross country runs are always one to try and
yeah, those elbows are still out. Don't worry.
They
about
are,
that.
yeah. I remember a boy in my year called Andrew Blatchford, who in the early years of school, yeah, he wasn't. I don't remember him being kind of year 7 and year 8 particularly athletic. And then I remember coming back. I think it might have been year 9. And if he ever watches this, I'm sure he should come and let me know if I'm wrong. But suddenly he came back in one year and he was much taller. He'd been doing a lot of swimming, fantastic swimmer.
Yeah.
And we got to the cross country term, and there was no greater sight than him breezing past Paul Holland, despite having his elbows out trying to block him. And then, as you say, on a cricket tour, we were fortunate enough to go to Antigua, I think in 2005 on cricket tour, and Paul Holland was the kind of lead coach on that trip. We had just a fantastic time. So we stayed in this amazing hotel where there's a cricket ground actually in the hotel grounds, and you can see the beach from the cricket ground. And the second game we played on that tour, we actually won. We chased down quite a reasonable target. I finished not out on 99, believe it or not. And guess who was doing the scoring? It was Paul Holland. I thought there's no way I could possibly finish on 99. So that whole evening after that game, despite winning, I had the scorebook on my lap, calculating exactly every run I'd scored to make sure that he had got it right. And despite my counting, he had got it right. I did finish on 90. I did not get the 100.
Definitely worth double checking, I have to say.
Yeah.
We've been lucky enough to go to that, the Jolly Beach resort. Yeah, I don't think I came on that tour. I think that was the birth of my first child. But I've been on several other tours there. It is a great place to go. Have you got I know one of my memories of you, James, is it's not a funny story at all. It's just of interest to me, is that I remember you would always be at games, the first change, the first out, and whatever the season sort of, there was a PE teacher at the time, Macca, Andrew McGregor Lowndes, and I just remember you come out and you'd be out 10 minutes before anyone else, and you and he would just be kicking a rugby ball to each other before anyone else even sort of appeared. And that's partly, I guess, why I was asking earlier about that drive and so on. Was it just in you that here's an opportunity to get a bit of extra practice, have a bit of fun, try and get one over on a teacher, etc. in terms of the kicking game that you guys played? Or was it just a case of, no, I want to get out of the change room, so smell?
No, I just loved it. I just loved that kind of that chance to compete. And Macca was always very competitive. It was great fun. He was almost the kid and I was the teacher in that environment, because he'd do anything to beat me. He'd cheat in any way he could in the kicking game. But yeah, I just wanted to play sport at that age. I just wanted to be outside. It didn't matter what ball was in my hand. It didn't matter where we were playing. And that's one of the things I look back so fondly at school, that we were given the opportunity to play lots of different types of sport. And yeah, my kind of sporting career took on a much more serious route after school. And I look back on that time as being the time when I really could just, play seriously, but also enjoy playing with friends, and just enjoying being part of that kind of environment.
Do you have moving on from school a little bit, do you have a favourite, this might come back to school, a favourite sports quote or mantra or saying that you sort of heard or you sort of repeat to yourself sometimes? No, I don't think I do. Or is there a sportsman or woman who you particularly admire in their way of going about things? You'd say that's someone who I can sort of aspire to. I did think that you might ask me this question, so I was thinking about this earlier as well. And actually, I came to the conclusion that the most important kind of people in my sporting life were really my dad from a young age. I was very good friends with Rob and Jack Williams, who were in the year above me, and then Jack. And both fine cricketers themselves. Yeah. Both fine cricketers, but also interested in other sports and things like that. And their dad, Dave Williams, who came on that trip to Antigua. Yeah. He would throw me
balls to hit as a batsman for hours on end. And same with Robbie, same with Jack. That was really a good part of my development and really accelerated me. But then I think I always came back to trying to work out, the process rather than the outcome as much as possible, because particularly with batting and cricket, you can do all the training, all the preparation, but someday you just get a good ball and you have to say, I couldn't have done anything else. The bowler was better than me on that day, and not beat yourself up. And when I went on to the professional game, that was the biggest part of the challenge in a way, the mentality of, playing 4 or 5 games a week, trying to be at your best over long periods of time and not get too hung up on, if you scored 100, it didn't necessarily mean you were going to captain England for the next 10 years. Likewise, if you got naught, it shouldn't mean that you were so bad that you should never play ever again. Trying to keep that kind of middle ground. And I suppose I've admired, and I think about when I was growing up, Johnny Wilkinson, clearly when we won the World Cup in 2003, it just really looked like he had a process every time he was going to, he's obviously famous for kicking, but he was a great rugby player in many other respects. But when you'd watch him kick, it would seem to be about the process, repeating the same thing over and over again to give himself the best chance. And I saw that a lot when I went into a professional dressing room at Kent, where the people, it was kind of almost a behind the scenes look at people that you'd admired from afar. They were really rigorous about doing the same things, making sure the preparation was as good as it possibly could be. So by the time you are actually performing in a game, it's kind of second nature. And I think that's a real transferable skill regardless of what kind of activity you're in. When I think about my job now, does involve kind of presentations to various people, both within the business I'm working for and externally. And they always go best when I've done good preparation. Same with my school studies. Same with life, I think, just to be as prepared as possible and kind of focus on the process and not get too hung up on the outcome as long as you've prepared well.
Everyone's got strength, James, and obviously as a sportsman, you've got great strengths, and I'm sure in your sort of place of work as well. But how did you, and how do you, if they've changed, sort of deal with, I say weaknesses, even if they're perceived weaknesses?
Yeah, so it's not an easy one, and there's two kind of lines of thought, and different coaches have told me different things. One is, focus on your strengths, don't worry about your weaknesses, because why would you waste time, worry about your weaknesses when you can make your strengths stronger? But I do think it's worth looking at them. And I think for me, it was kind of on the outside, everyone would think that I was maybe quite confident and assured of myself and what I was going to do, whereas on the inside you always have those questions about oh, I don't feel quite good today, am I going to play well, or am I really good enough to go up to the next level and play in the next age group, or go from the second team to the first team, all those kind of things. And so it was much a kind of, in terms of weaknesses, a kind of mental battle of, I found very helpful to remind myself of previous instances where I'd performed well, or where I'd had those similar feelings but actually overcome them, and the end result had been a positive thing, despite me kind of feeling those nerves or feeling those doubts that I'm sure everyone does feel.
Goody. Is that something which you learned over time? And would you say that towards the end of your career, you were able to deal with maybe that concept of failure and actually looked at failure from a positive perspective? And as far as, look, this has happened, I'm not going to dwell on it. I'm going to learn, and I'm then going to make myself, as a consequence, better in the long run.
In fact, I almost felt the reverse. When I was younger, I felt I could bounce back more quickly. We have a cricket match, but there'd be a tennis match to play, or there'd be a fives match to go to. You could always look at the next thing, whereas the longer I went on, the more I kind of specialised along the cricket route, the more serious it became, with contracts and your job at stake and trying to progress. The more difficult I found it to overcome, those kind of feelings of remembering, last week I got a pair, thinking that's quite a good story, actually. So the last season I played professional cricket, I just got into the first team. I was trying to prove myself. We were playing against Middlesex at Lords, my first time ever playing at Lords, and I got a pair. And I was back in the second team. We were playing at Kent's second ground Beckenham in the second team, I think against Gloucestershire the week after, again in a 4-day game. And in the first innings of that game, I got a pair. No, I got a duck. So I was on 3 noughts in a row. And so the second innings comes round, and I face 5 balls. I feel rotten. My confidence is low. I think on the 6th ball, I nick it to second slip, and second slip dropped a very easy chance. And I kind of used that to try and propel me forwards, and ended up getting, I think, about 130 odd to break the kind of string of ducks. But going back to the original question, I found it more difficult as time went on to try. It was almost the scars building up of all the experience you've had in the past of, successes but also failures nagging at your mind, whereas when I was young and kind of enthusiastic, I felt like I could just look past that and go on to the next one. And having that kind of balance, when I think about people like Joe Root, Josh Butler, Ben Stokes that we mentioned earlier, they didn't seem to let that affect them at all. They kind of pushed through that. Their determinism really won out. And I think that's a quality I've noticed as in the people that I've played with that have gone on to really great things, to not let those kind of poor experiences get them too down.
No, that's really interesting, and that was going to lead me on to asking questions. Is there any traits? Obviously, these guys which you mentioned are fantastically talented. Aside from the talent, are there any traits which you've seen in your high performance experience or in environments which you think have maybe separated people in the changing rooms? Aside from obviously fantastically talented individuals.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, because actually, when I look back at that under-16 team that was mentioned earlier, it was very, very difficult to tell who was going to be, the future England players from that team. Although Joe Root was obviously a very good player, he was quite small and he didn't quite have the power at that age. He didn't look automatically that he was going to be an England captain and one of the all-time England best batsmen. So thinking about it over, I think a willingness to put yourself in uncomfortable positions during training really stood those kind of the 3 names that we've mentioned, stood them out. I remember we went to Bangladesh on an under-19 trip, and before we played our first game, we had lots of training sessions, and just the willingness to go and bat in a quite spicy net that was bouncing and seaming all over the place, where few people were thinking I might actually get hurt here, whereas people like Joe Root and Ben Stokes and Butler were, no, come on, this is exactly the environment I really want to be in. If I can thrive and perform well in this training environment, which may actually be more difficult than the game itself, I'm going to be in a really good position to do well. And I think that's replicated in the people that perform best as well. In my time at Kent, we would have the worst experience during the winter, apart from fitness sessions and fitness training, would be indoor nets at Canterbury, where you're on a rock hard floor where there's no mat, and even a medium pacer is able to fly it round your ears, and you feel like you really might get hurt. But the best batsmen really thrived on that. They were the ones that would put the bowling machine up to 90 miles an hour, put themselves in really uncomfortable positions, and just really loved the challenge of seeing how far they could push themselves.
It's a wonderful answer. Thank you for that, Kinsey. That's brilliant.
We've touched on lots of things. I want to sort of pull it together a little bit. I know in some ways you've touched on an answer to this question already, but how do you think sport has helped shape you as a person, and in terms of your current career, what have been your takeaways from sport that you'd say, what, I'm better at my job because of that sporting experience, or what sport has given you?
I just think I'm a more balanced, well-rounded person. You can't underestimate the importance of being in a team environment when you're a young person, having to work together with people that maybe you don't particularly like, or you don't always see eye to eye with in terms of strategy or how things should be done, but being forced to get on with them and find the best possible route out of problems that pose themselves, in a rugby match, where the other team's forwards or their backs are much better, trying to find a way out of that kind of situation is a real kind of transferable skill that has led me on when I think about today, working with small teams, but also big teams, working with people that have very different backgrounds and different ideas. being open-minded to know that you can. There's more than one way of doing things. I think that's been a real key. But then going back, the most important one that sports really given me is to try and keep that balance. As I said earlier, to not get carried away when things are going well, and then to not get too despondent when things aren't. And when I look at people that I work with now who have played sport at an early age, that would be the real skill I see that they have generally across the board, is that they're able to deal with difficult and pressurized environments, but they're also able to dust themselves down and get up the next day and go at the same rate and the same enthusiasm as they were the day before. And I think that's a great lesson that sport has kind of instilled in me.
I think we should as well, James, preface that bit by saying that you were very popular at school. It wasn't like you were falling out with all your teammates left.
No, absolutely not. But that you have all different. My kind of point I was trying to make is that within a school environment, you've got the ones that want to win at all costs, and they're really, that's everything. The ones that want to play and enjoy the game for what it is, and some people that actually are new to the sport and are not really sure and are coming into it. And when I think about my rugby days, my cricket days at St Olave's, one of the challenges and one of the things that I think I learned to get quite good at was trying to bring a disparate group of people that were coming to the game from all different angles together to try and work together and reach the same outcome.
And that's really interesting, because I think, thinking back to the cricket team that you were part of at school, as I say, there were some very talented cricketers in there, the Matt Ryans and Alex Gears, and just to name a few, good cricketers in their own right. But it was interesting to watch you on your cricketing journey, who'd come to the school already as a very proficient cricketer and obviously went on to great things. And then to throw another name out there, someone like a Luke Wooldridge, who didn't come as a cricketer, was a fantastic rugby player, went and played for London Irish and so on, tremendous rugby player. But he made himself into a really good cricket player, but he didn't arrive as one. And for me as a coach, it was really interesting to watch the journey that you two went on in different ways. He was a more natural rugby player, arguably, than you. You were obviously much more natural cricket player. But the two of you just got on so well and probably helped drive each other forward. Is that a fair reflection, do you think?
Absolutely, yeah. And I'm going to tell this story because he'll crucify me if I don't say it. But we played a district match against each other. I was playing for Bromley District. He was playing for Lewisham District. And we were playing at a rainy Catford Cyphers cricket ground. I think we were 13. And to be honest, it was a Sunday morning. I didn't think the game was going to be played. It was one of those kind of grey, miserly days. But the umpires told us, we're going to play. I was opening the batting for Bromley. Luke was opening the bowling for Lewisham. And the very first ball of the match, he bowled me this huge in-swinger. Now, Luke would bowl with quite a front-on action, bowl, big in-swinger.
Chest on, barrel chest, yeah.
Exactly. And he castled me first ball off stump out the ground of the whole match. I thought there's no way I can go back to school the next day. There's no way I can show my face ever again. But absolutely, yeah, that kind of competitiveness within a team between Luke and myself, I think did push both of us on, me in cricket as well, which was really great.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you a few sort of quick fire questions if I can. Is that all right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, here we go. I'm going to give you about 5 seconds per answer. So get ready to deal with it. All right. When was the last time you cried at a sporting event?
Frank Lampard being sacked as Chelsea manager.
If you could have 3 sporting dinner guests, who would you choose?
Shane Warne, Tiger Woods, and Paula Radcliffe.
Okay. After training, what's your favourite food to eat? Oh, we already heard it.
Burger and chips.
Other than cricket, what's your favourite sport to play?
Football.
And lastly, what advice would you give an 11-year-old James Goodman looking back now?
Enjoy it. The time will go very, very quickly. Don't be so keen on getting always to the next thing, looking out too far. Enjoy the moment a bit more. Enjoy the variety of the sport that you're going to play before, life moves on and you're on to new things.
Goodsy, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for giving up your time and being our first guest on a trip down Goddington Lane. But your trip down Goddington Lane has now come to an end. But thank you again for giving your time. Mike Perks, thank you very much for your help. And James Double, who's in charge of the IT, thank you as well.
Cheers, Goodsy. Really appreciate that. Thank you very much.
That's quite all right. I really enjoyed it. Thanks for the questions.